We've got 25 people in the room, and that's probably pretty good for a day like today. So we'll run with it. What do you say? Johnny Knoxville's in the house is the first to check in. Thank you very much, for friend Idris Taylor is here, as is Alex A from Barrie, Ontario. And sometimes I listen to myself, good afternoon. And it is, in fact, an afternoon, and it ain't that bad. I did run with the Bad Axe yesterday. I actually went to Port Austin. My brother's band was playing at a farmer's market kind of thing. And to get there, you go through Bad Axe. And so stepped out of the car, got a quick picture in front of the sign in front of the radio station. Hadn't done that in a while. And then went up and watched my brother's band play, and then came back down, had lunch in Bad Axe, and then came home. Nice little trip up into the thumb of Michigan. But Randall Spencer's checking from Hope, Arkansas. And Alex A bought a Ford Explorer about a week ago, used or new? Because I've got two right now. I got an old one and a new one. Scott Summers is in the house. Sometimes I listen to myself, how did you find out that the professor plagiarized your work? I've written books on a variety of topics, and it was on one of the narrower topics I've written about. And somebody said, hey, this professor just published a book that has a big section on something you've written about. And when I went and looked, I'm like, oh, not only have I written about it, I wrote this. Some people have got no shame. Hey, DePaul31, good afternoon. And to you, my friend, I got a nice note from you. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Mark Miller's in the house, working on the temperature, I think in his office, and trying to do what he can there. 56F in Metro Denver. Dew point of 34F, 20 degrees warmer in the office without heat or air conditioning. So there you go. And don't forget the Indy 500's on right now. And by telling you that, will probably encourage a few people to leave and go watch it. But I used to watch it when I was a little kid. I loved that thing, and then I kind of lost interest in it in later years. I don't know. It's just not the same. AJ Foyt was my hero. I loved that guy. I loved AJ Foyt. So Alex A, I used 2015. Okay, that's not bad. I've got an 02 and a 2024. But I like them both. If you take care of it, it'll take care of you. Andrew Zubke, hello from Michigan. Michigan. Where in Michigan? I'm in Michigan. Johnny Quest from Wyoming, Iowa. Wyoming, Iowa. That's a good confusing one for you. Chuck Whitehead from Jonesboro, Tennessee. Steve G's from San Diego. Daniel Kester says hello to everybody. And Sven the Impaler. Greetings from Baltimore. Mr. Steve, thank you very much. I had a client who called me Mr. Steve. Mr. Steve. Mr. Steve. He had a very heavy accent. I'm not sure what the accent was. Very, very nice. One of my favorite clients of all time. Toad Walker, that guy ever talked to the lady truck driver? Oh, you mean last week that, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We had a little lonely hearts going on here in the chat last week. We'll see. Tyler Durden, Hive 91 in Baton Rouge. Oh, Jay says there's a rain delay at Indy. Hey, if God didn't make little green apples, or did he? I always forget. But it don't rain in Indianapolis in the summertime. But I hear it rains during Memorial Day weekend quite a bit. Johnny Knoxville's checking in saying, hey, Lehto. Of course, that would be German for Mr. I believe it's a very formal Mr. But Alex A says the windshield wiper doesn't park low enough and blocks the view. The front one or the back one? I've never had that problem before. D Woods loading up scrap metal today. Yeah, got to do something. I remember when I was a little kid, they'd always tell me to be careful on scrap metal because you could get tetanus or lockjaw. Lockjaw. I was convinced for the longest time somebody made that up just to scare little kids because lockjaw sounds like something you don't want to have. By the way, I went to the dentist earlier this week for a cleaning, and the dentist did that thing where he's like, put something in my mouth and tells me to move my jaw different ways. I'm like, would you like me to disarticulate it for you? And he goes, don't laugh. I once had a client whose jaw got locked in some weird position. But he didn't say it was locked jaw, but he said he had some issues with his jaw. Taekwondo guy says, I remember now it's Jido-kwan. I practiced, Mr. Lehto, would forget that there was also Muda-kwan and confused it with the World Taekwondo headquarters in Kukuwan. And you have to understand that in Taekwondo, the three words, do, of course, is the way of doing something, and or practice of doing something. Tai and Kwan, one means to punch, one means to kick. So it's basically a method of kicking and punching. And there are different schools that teach different styles in Korea. And Kwan, spelled Kwan as opposed to Kwon. Kwan is a school. So Mudokwan is a school that teaches the Mudu or Mudok style of Taekwondo. Again, me and the Taekwondo guy care about it. Nobody else does. Oh, Andrew Zubke is in Adrian, Michigan. Adrian, Michigan, which is sort of down here a little ways. Sort of down here. It's from the Detroit area, and you're heading towards Toledo, kind of. But I know it's further in. I've been there before. Steve Mills says years ago there was a Thurston the Magician throw out card on your shelf. It's still there. It moves around. Things move around. David Larson, greetings and hallucinations, weirdos. Nana's Ranch, checking from Northeast Tennessee. Northeast Tennessee. I like Tennessee a lot too. I've mentioned before I like the Carolinas. I like Tennessee as well. I've been there many times. So Duncan Campbell, are you having a nice Sunday? So far, I actually got up this morning and we've had a lot of rain, but not volume, but frequency. So every single day we get a couple periods of rain to where my grass has been wet for the last like 10 days. I haven't been able to mow it. I got up this morning. I said, I'm getting up. I'm going outside at 9 o'clock. I'm going to start mowing. And I had some issues with wet grass building up underneath the deck of my mower. But I got a couple big sections mowed that were starting to look a little unruly, as they say. So, yeah, so I got a lot accomplished this morning. Andrew Zupke says, I'm curious about something. Okay? I'm curious about all kinds of stuff. Ella Thea is in the house calling out lockjaw. Is there in fact an emoji for lockjaw? What would it look like? Like that's kind of like what the one there on the far right of yours looks like. Oh, Jeremiah Pritchard, when is the robot lady from Canada going to make a live appearance? She will be checking in today. She sent me a note. She said that they are that she'll be here, just not right away, but she'll be here. So she'll be in the house shortly. She always announces her presence. Troy Built says the place at Wipers Park is adjustable. Yes, quite often it is. So if it parks too high, you can probably go out and loosen something and move it down and leave it. Just make sure that it still sweeps as far as it needs to when it's sweeping. Anthony says, hi, Steve, from Delight, Arkansas. Somebody else checked in from Hope, Arkansas. You guys are very emotional down in Arkansas, aren't you? Oh, John Michael Carmen says, I got lockjaw biting jujubes. But did the jujubes eventually dissolve and solve your problem? So, Joel Jensen, why isn't Grand Funk Railroad in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but rappers and country artists are? Grand Funk Railroad, and don't get me wrong, I love Grand Funk Railroad. I've met two of the three members. I've actually met two of them. Nice guys. And the thing about it is that they got a really bad rap because they weren't considered artsy enough for the musicians to, like, oh my gosh, look at those, artistic chord progressions or whatever. But the thing is, their music sold really, really well. They were huge when they were happening, and they put on a live show that was just stellar. I never saw them live, but I've seen footage and I've heard. And I had a couple older brothers who bought a bunch of their stuff, and they had some pretty big songs. And some originals that were pretty good. And I'm Your Captain. Very, very unusual stuff too in a roundabout way. But then I like their version of Locomotion, which is appropriate for Grand Funk Railroad. And for those of you who don't know, there was a railroad in the Midwest a long time ago called Grand Trunk Railroad, and they took the name from Grand Funk Railroad. They got it from that. And then, of course, somewhere along the line, the railroad company threatened to sue them for trademark infringement. And rather than fighting with them, they just said, we'll just drop the railroad and become Grand Funk, which, by the way, is a great name, too. So what are you going to do? Zach Larson wasn't Lockjaw, a character in the James Bond series. If not, he should have been. Fast Eddie checking in from Fort Worth, Texas. Alexander Ganaka claims that he was with somebody who got lockjaw last night. Dan Boyd, Mark Farner. That's one of the guys I met. I also met Mel Shocker, the bass player. I never did meet Donnie Brewer, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as Meatloaf would say. Brian B claims he got lockjaw from drinking red wine on an empty stomach. Was it homemade stuff or was it good? Oh. Yeah, Daniel Kessler says be sure not to pronounce it Arkansas. Arkansas. Oh. By the way, the bit about being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is just kind of a weird thing. I'm not even sure. The halls of fame always kind of seem odd to me. I like the fact that they keep the history, like the fact that there's a baseball hall of fame and you can go there and see historical artifacts. It's more like a museum. But then they start getting into this stuff about who belongs in the hall of fame, and you get these sports writers in particular who get bent out of shape about different people. And like, for instance, Jack Morris. Jack Morris was a pitcher for, among other teams, the Detroit Tigers. And he put up some amazing statistics. And for some odd reason, the sports writers didn't like him. They go, well, he did okay, but he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. And it's like, okay. Oh, boy. The scooter guy says a woman filed for divorce based on Chat GPT telling her that her husband was cheating. You don't need to send me the link. I've seen that story before. To me, it's idiotic. But trusting Chat GPT is like saying I asked a magic 8 ball what I should do with my money. I mean, people would go like, "What are you, stupid?" Same thing. Same thing. So, Richard Terhune says lockjaw is the same as tetanus. I thought one caused the other, but I wasn't sure. But all I remember is they'd always say you get tetanus, you get lockjaw. So, funny, Fatty McButterpants has put Pete Rose in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Pete Rose is the greatest example of I don't know there's a right or wrong answer to this. Because remember, he got banned from baseball because he was gambling on baseball games, which apparently he admitted. And then later on, they said, well, he can't be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And later on, they're like, maybe he can be. And the question is like, well, who belongs in there? I mean, they could always put him in and say, by the way, he tarnished his image at the end of his career by admitting that he gambled on baseball, So Daniel Kessler says, how do you get the answers to the universe? The answer is not the tricky part, my friend. It's what's the question? The answer is 42. Alexander Ganakis says, I'm convinced that sleep paralysis isn't real. Really? Because I'm convinced it is real. And I'm not going to get too heavily into it, but I have had a situation before where I woke up from a deep, deep sleep and I had a hard time moving at first because I think my brain was still telling me I was asleep. Jeremy Briggs says, my haircut is the Pete Rose. Oh. The opinion rat says, I asked Chat GPT what I should do with my money, and it said, reply hazy, try again. Aldo Leva, hey, Steve, my man, greetings from sunny Mexico. It's sunny here. I mean, I don't know if you can see the sunshine out my window there, but I got 59 degrees. 59. I think we're getting a high later today, possibly 61. So I mean, you can go outside and you can work and stuff, but it's just kind of weird being all bundled up this late in the year. Steve Clapper says there's no forgiveness in America. Well, the weird part is that I suspect Pete Rose wasn't the first person to bet on baseball. And the question is, was he, don't get me wrong, if a guy admitted, like, I played basketball and I shaved points, that's different. But simply saying I put money on a game, I'm not sure. But then again, I mean, Pete Rose's numbers were insane. I mean, the guy was, and the guy was a very good baseball player. You know, so D Wood says it's 63 right now in Bay City. Carl's Corner says you and the Indy 500. What a Sunday! And someone said there's a rain delay. Is it still rain delayed? Reinhard Man says, did Pete get rich betting on baseball? If not, vote him in. Did anybody get rich betting on anything like long-term sports betting? I know so many people who are gamblers who just lost money. Oh man, is this close? This close. Easy one. Ever take the Viper for a speedy rip down Pleasant Valley Road or Burkhart Road? Where are those roads located? I don't think so. Yeah, lockdown losses. Pete Rose bet against his own team while he was managing it, and that would be a conflict of interest. I'm imagining. Anthony, I sure do appreciate your excellent videos. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I appreciate that. Alex Ace, I don't think it's wrong to bet on your people do it all the time. You see these friendly wagers all the time where it's like, I'll bet you 10 pound of lobsters that will beat your team. And the other guys go, no, I'll bet you 10 gallons of, chili or whatever. You see these friendly bets all the time. But they had rules specifically against gambling if you were a ball player gambling on baseball. So Tyler Durden says 99% of gamblers quit before they win big. And 99% of gamblers are also losing right now overall. Zach Larson says Jack Morris is will forever be a Minnesota Twin. It's like people who think that Kirk Gibson was a Dodger. You can't tell me that. I saw him with my own eyes hit a home run in Game 5 of the '84 World Series off of Goose Gossage. He's wearing a Tigers uniform. That's the sad part about how baseball and most professional sports are, with the players moving around like that. Mexican Spec has a quote here. It says, Rose has maintained that he never bet against his own team, but some reports indicate otherwise. I saw one of those, my favorite show on TV, American Greed, about Art Schlichter, the former Ohio State quarterback who didn't quite do so well after he got out of college and wound up just stealing money from all kinds of people and wound up just, spiraling into the ground. It's so sad. The guy had such a promising career, and partly he was also a compulsive gambler apparently. So VIP Daddy says, complicated issue, but do you think my coworker has a case in Arkansas against a restaurant for the footage of her autistic son being stomped? It got out to other stores before she ever got to see it. I'm not quite sure what the situation is here, because why was he getting stomped? Are you saying he got beat up by people? I'm not quite sure, but the problem is if it happens in Arkansas, I wouldn't know. I'm only licensed in Michigan. And it also depends on, is she simply the boy's mother or does she work there? There's more facts that are missing from that might change the relationships of these parties. So Alexander Ganakis says the 500 is a favor of rednecks and billies of hills because that's about all the rules they can comprehend. Be first after driving in a circle till someone says stop. But here's the thing. You're describing NASCAR, okay? NASCAR. The Indy 500 is a little different in that the cars are much more advanced. They're racing at higher speeds. They're open cars. There's a lot more danger involved. And the 500 also does have the legacy. The history of it is unbelievable. And so I've always admired the Indy 500, but it just kind of lost it for me in the last few years. I can tell you that if you ever want to read a really good book, there's a book about the first Indy 500 ever, and it tells the history leading up to it, and then it talks about the first race, and it is one of the most amazing. Um, Hang on a second. I'll get it for you. And now my phone is going slow. It's called Blood and Smoke. Blood and Smoke. And it's written by a guy named Charles Learson. Blood and Smoke. It is absolutely fascinating. And it's one of the best history books I've ever read and one of the best sports books, because sports books are normally a difficult sell. How exciting can you make a sport? It's amazing. It's an amazing book. So I highly recommend it if you get a chance to see it. Zach, do you know if Bill France was involved with the Indy 500? I don't believe so. Bill France was the founder of NASCAR. And prior to Bill France, there was a bunch of different racing organizations that got together to sponsor stock car races. And the problem they had was that they would often have a race and the prize money wouldn't be there at the end of the race, and the drivers got ripped off. And so Bill France was actually a driver. He was a racer at one point. And he realized that, oh, if I could solve that one problem, I could become the king of all this. And so he started NASCAR, and the NASCAR sanctioning rule was that if you wanted your race to be a NASCAR race, you had to put the prize money up before the race started. And Bill France would hold the money. And Bill France was respected enough by the rest of the drivers that when he said, I've got your money, the race would happen. There were a couple occasions where Bill France showed up and said, where's the money? And the promoter says, we'll give it to you at the end of the race. And Bill France goes, what race? You're not going to have a race unless you give me the money. And promoters were famous for looking at how much money they had and going, well, if we pay them, screw it, let's get out of here. And they take off while the race is still going. Oh, Josh says the Mystery Science Theater 3000 is 6 times better than the Indy 500. I agree, although it depends on which era we're talking about. I'm a fan of Mike. I don't. The original host I don't think is as good, but that's splitting hairs. Mexican Spec says the Corvette's been the Indy 500 pace car 22 times since 1978. Airplane Mechanic MST 3K for life. And please tell me you've seen the movie This Island Earth, the actual full-length one they did for theatrical release. It's one of the best things they ever did. It is so funny. Retired Sock Monkey, wife's birthday, checking in. Tell her I said happy birthday, my friend. Mr. Smithers, F1 over NASCAR any day, in my humble opinion. The only problem I've got with F1 is a lot of the courses, I know this is not popular to say this, but a lot of the courses are set up to where there's nowhere to pass. So there's a bunch of guys snaking through the corners and stuff. And it's like, I'd like to see some space where you can pass once in a while. And the other problem with F1, it's kind of like with European football. You know that if you go to a match like at Manchester to see Manchester United play, there's not a clock that's the official clock that you can watch. The official clock is on a referee's wrist, unless they've changed that recently. And so quite often, as you get towards the end of the game, someone will hold up a sign that goes, added time, which they have to do that. But Americans are used to the idea that you can watch the clock in football, and that clock goes all zeros for the most part. The game's over. Okay? You can count down the end of a game. You can't do that in European football. And so likewise with F1, Indy 500 is 500 miles. How long is an F1 race? It depends. Jeremy Briggs says my mom was babysat by Cha Cha Muldowney, Shirley Muldowney, when she was a kid. That's pretty cool. I wonder if she was a typical babysitter or if she was a little more of a risk taker. Padre, what do you think about Dodge already stopping production of the Charger EV? I hate to try to attribute anything, good or bad, to any actions taken by Stellantis. I'm not sure those people know what they're doing about anything nowadays. I don't know. If they're not selling, I guess he stopped making them. So it depends. Mexican Spec says there might not have been enough cars up that measured up. Well, I think also the car companies pay. I think they pay to be the one to do that because it's good advertising for them. I do remember one year Chrysler wanted to use the Stealth, and the Stealth wasn't manufactured in the U.S. People freaked out. They had to bring in something else. So Daniel Kester, is a hot dog a sandwich? That, my friend, is one of the top 3 questions that cannot be answered by even Chat GPT. Somebody quick, type that in. Alexander Kanakis is full plug-in hybrids. Hey, you know what they should do is they should have F1 using electric cars, but make them pull in and recharge every now and then. Oh, Alexander Kanaka, can I stop repeating myself weekly? Repeating what you say or repeating what you do? Because a lot of times 1 week does seem like the last. Ryan Lab's a 3000 GT. Are you talking about the car that was the base for the Stealth? Mark Miller, wasn't the Stealth a Mitsubishi? I believe it was, yes. Mad Michael says a hot dog isn't a sandwich, it's a taco. But isn't a taco just a hinged sandwich? And some people actually say, who cares? Why would this matter? And as an attorney, I've got to tell you that I have seen cases. I've seen cases where they argue over these things because somebody signed a lease and the lease said, I can sell sandwiches. And then a place moves in next door that sells hot dogs. So this sandwich place starts selling hot dogs. And they go, you can't. Your lease only says you can only sell sandwiches. Nowadays, everyone knows you have to actually say sandwiches and or hot dogs, or sandwiches but not hot dogs. Old Paint says tacos aren't hinged. Oh, they got the thing that connects the two sides together. You fold it over too far and it snaps. Yeah, the Prodigal Stranger, Dodge Stealth, Mitsubishi 3000 GT, same car, different name tags. I think I drove one. It's pretty peppy of a car. Steve Clapper says Shirley Muldowney should be a feminist icon. She didn't just win, she dominated. No, that's the amazing thing. And you want to talk about something where sex or gender does not matter. Okay? You get yourself in this thing that's got thousands of horsepower that's going to launch you for a few seconds down a runway. And, 3-4 seconds later, you're at some insane speed. But meanwhile, if anything goes even the slightest wrong, you're going to die, your car is going to explode, or you're going to wind up in the stands killing people. And if you can dominate that sport, that is impressive. So I agree with you 100%, my friend. Steve Clapper says, ha, ha, ha. Ember Mist, has the lawnmower gotten more use this past few weeks compared to this time last year? It's been grass growing all the time here in Ohio with all the rain. Well, that's the thing. As I said earlier, I've got a lot of rain, but not rain volume, but rain frequency. Like yesterday, it rained for like 10 minutes. It's supposed to rain this afternoon for like half an hour. And so I've got no standing water on my property, but I got grass this tall in some places. That's just getting out of control. So Johnny Quest says burgers are sandwiches. Chuck Whitehead says so a burrito could be called a wrap. See, the funniest thing about this is other than simply being something you might argue about in a contract law case, it really doesn't matter. And you'll hear people getting all bent out of shape going, but a hot dog's not a sandwich. Well, who cares? I don't like, what if you don't even like hot dogs? Locked on Law says that Ashley Force is hot, literally. I believe she's a pretty good driver too, isn't she? I think it runs in her family. Standard deviation says the Mitsubishi 3000 could be all-wheel drive and all-wheel steering. All-wheel steering, I've seen that in a couple of vehicles. I think the new Hummers have got it too. And it's one of those things that's really, really cool. But then you realize the level of complication it adds to the vehicle and the cost. You're like, is it worth it? But it's cool. Many things are cool, but are they worth it? Don't know. Mad Michael says, is water wet? That's like people want to argue about whether or not oxygen is flammable. And the funny part is that on the one hand, technically speaking, we're talking chemistry. Oxidation occurs with oxygen in conjunction with something else. Okay. And yet, whenever you see bottles of oxygen some places, warning sign, flammable, flammable. And that is one of the things I can say, and I still occasionally say it just because I know it's going to piss off some people. Oxygen is not flammable. Technically it's not flammable. Okay, you run around and correct that and see if you can get the lines on the bottles of oxygen saying they're flammable. Reinhard Man says a straw has one hole. I would agree with you on that, but I do understand the distinction between the holes at different ends and how can they be distinction if they're the same. Mr. Fix at GA, would you buy a new Slate EV? If not, why? If yes, why? I'm not in the market for a small pickup truck. I think it's a cool idea. Believe it or not, I'd be more intrigued if they said, yeah, we're going to drop a really, really simple little 4-cylinder into it and it'll get great gas mileage. Then I'd consider it. But I'm not in the market for something like that. And I'm not quite sure I want to be a guinea pig because anytime anybody launches something brand new, there's going to be problems. So Mr. Smithers says one can argue legitimately the sky is green if you're using Imperial Roman definitions. Well, believe it or not, I think in the old days they also would say it was purple because they've discovered this, that colors are partially based on society and how you're raised. And there were entire societies that didn't have a different color blue. And they would just refer to the color of the sky as being a different shade of purple. I think that's what it was. I could be wrong. Michael Hoyland says in the dictionary, look up flammable. It says, see, flammable. Or inflammable, too. Oxygen is an oxidizer, which sounds redundant, says Locked on Law. Dan Boyd says those aren't holes in the straw, they're portals. They're portals. Forgive Gods. Any thoughts on the new Karen Reed trial? I'll be honest, I've not followed any of that. I've not followed any of it, and I apologize. I keep getting asked about the Karen Reed trial, and I don't know anything about it. And once in a while, one just goes completely under my radar, and I don't know. I don't know a darn thing about it. Piper John says it's like the reduced speed ahead. No, it should be reduced speed limit ahead, or reduce your speed ahead. But the speed is not reduced ahead. Well, it is if you're doing what you're supposed to do, but Padre says it's already been the first wreck at the 500 and it hasn't even started yet. So where was it? The pits? Oh boy. John, who makes hoses professionally, he is in fact a hose maker. I am of the opinion a hose only has one hole. However, a hose with a fitting that has been crimped on its ends has two holes. Prodigal stranger. What I hate is this page intentionally left blank. I always wanted to get one of my publishers to let me do that in the middle of the book. Just turn the page, this page left intentionally blank, and then have you go to the next page. Oh boy. Mexican spec, if the slate has no screens, how are they going to get around the mandated reverse camera regulation? I don't know. Are they mandated on all cars, including small pickup trucks? I don't know. Or maybe could they get around that by having you use your phone somehow, maybe? I don't know. Miguel Sudorado, did you catch the interview with Penske talking about owning a team and also the Indy 500? No, I did not see that. Zach, did you hear about them getting rid of the penny? Yeah, I heard that. That's unfortunate. I still think they're useful. I think somehow it's going to come back to bite us. We're going to lose 4 cents on every transaction as they round everything up. Oh boy. Prodigal Stranger says alcohol is in fact a solution according to science. It's a solution to all our problems. Oh boy. Mr. Fixes, but it's not blank. Well, of course, yeah, the sign makes it so it's not blank, but as for the content that was preceding it and following it. JW, so a straw has only one hole. Does a cup only have half a hole? Well, I guess it has an incomplete hole. Reinhard man, will they leave existing penalties in circulation? I'm sure they will, but they're going to stop making them. But they'll go out of circulation very quickly because stores are going to say we don't have to give you change, and there's a weird phenomenon that happens when something gets out of minted circulation. People tend to hoard them, so I suspect that the pennies will disappear very, very quickly unless they start going back and minting them again later. School bus Mike, howdy Steve, your friend Mike in Westland checking in. I appreciate that. Stop spam and as I understand it, they're going to keep them in circulation, but stop making them. But I honestly think, though, that once they stop making them, that'll give stores an excuse to stop using them. And so they'll say, hey, it's $3.97 if you got exact change. And if you don't, they're going to go, oh, well, you got to use a card then, or, or debit or electric, whatever, electronic. And then if not, we'll give you change, but we're going to just give you change as if we're going to round up. And so there you go. Yeah, nickel for your thoughts does not roll off the tongue, says Fatty McButterpants. I agree with you. RC Guru says the penny has cost more to produce than it's worth. Yeah, but that the cost of the coinage does not factor into its value in that sense. And the reason I'm saying that is, why do we make $1 bills then? Because we could make $100 bills at the same cost. Mexican specs is a cup has an opening, not a hole. Oh boy. David Persons, it's almost 100 here in Austin. How are things in Michigan? Try 59 degrees. That's how things are. I'm not complaining, though. It beats snow. Anthony, what these live chats show me is that you have a lot of knowledge about many subjects, not just the law, of course. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The trick is to skip over the questions I know nothing about and only answer the ones I know something about. Bob blah blah says the lack of pennies should affect every Walmart sign. Seriously, a store like Walmart, what are they going to now list all the prices as being factors, fives or zeros, or are they still going to use those numbers but just make it round up at the cash register? I don't know. Ryan Labs points out that stores will often deny $2 bills. Opinion Rat thinks that they're going to actually replace $1.99 with $1.95. No, they'll say the price is still $1.99. But when you go to pay, they're going to go, well, that's $2, unless you're using a card or something where you can actually use the exact number. So, by the way, somebody actually commented, and I've mentioned before, I often go back and I rewatch these videos later to see if I missed anything. I missed so much stuff in the chat, and I apologize for that. And I had somebody last week go, yeah, Steve announced a long time ago that he removed the $100 bill from his set and replaced it with a fake one. No, I didn't. I've got a real $100 bill in the set. It's a real $100 bill. I never said that. And I don't know. People say these things that I supposedly said, and I'm like, I never said that. I'll get an email from somebody go, hey, Steve, in one of your videos, you once said, and they'll say the most outrageous thing. I never said that. You did a couple years ago in a video. Can you show it to me? I don't know. You've done a lot of videos. Yeah, I never said that. No, you did. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. The $100 bill is real on my set. Zach, how will I ride the horse at Myers? That's the tricky one, my friend. That's the tricky one, because that horse at Meyer has been rideable with the pennies for the longest time. I suppose they'll probably leave them around until pennies disappear and then make them work on nickels or something. So, Bernadine Sackinger, should I spend my dollar silver certificate from 1935? Well, it's if you spend it, you get $1 for it. If it's in rough condition, it might not be worth much more than $1, but it's still kind of cool. I'd hang on to it. Waddley 99 says it only applies to final price. No, of course. So you buy 75 things, you buy 23 things, whatever it is, you buy a bunch of stuff. You buy a bunch of stuff. And they say the price is this, this dollars and this many cents. And all that's going to matter is, are the cents a 0 or a 5? And if it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4, well, they're just going to round it up to 5. If it's a 6, 7, 8, or 9, they're going to round it up to the next 0. And so they're not going to be rounding down. They're going to round everything up. It's your fault you don't have change. So, Chief FC said you did sell the original $100 bill and replace it. I swapped it. A guy sent me 100, and I traded. I don't quite know what he got out of it, but it is a real $100 bill. It has always been a real $100 bill. Georgiana Thornton, hey, from San Antonio. How are you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Duncan Campbell, Australia removed the 1 and 2 cent coins decades ago. You still see a lot of prices that end in 99 cents. If you have them, they are still accepted as our old $1 and $2 notes. The funny thing is that we had 2 cent coins back during the Civil War, but haven't had them in a long time. But we also had half cents a long time ago. Tom says, are you talking about Meijer? MEIJER? Yes. The Meijer stores. Now, somebody said Myers earlier, but they said it possessively. But Meijer is, of course, the grocery store, but it's a very large grocery store. They're based in Michigan, but they're throughout the Midwest. And many of them, I saw one yesterday, many of them still have the riding horse up the front, a little kid can get on, and you put pennies into it. Somebody said, hey, love your show. Have a Jets pizza on me. My ex's favorite, Joe Mangi. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. There's not a Jets pizza near me, though. The nearest Jets pizza is about 10 miles away. But I like Jets. I've had Jets. There's a Jets near my brother's house. A lot of times we go over there for something. We wind up ordering Jets. Dan Boyd, did you ever show motion picture currency on the channel? Yes, I did do that. And somebody, hang on. Oh, it's right here. I don't know if I dare. I can't get it. Directly underneath that tube are 5 or 6 motion picture $100 bills that somebody sent me. And they are on the set, but they're not visible. You can't see them. They're underneath something. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. The elimination of the penny won't affect a debit card or credit card or electronic transfer purchases just if you're using cash. And that's correct. And so it's not going to affect everything. But I still think that there are going to be times where you're going to pay more money because the penny's gone. And so anytime you're paying more money, technically speaking, is a form of effectively inflation. Tom says, thanks, Steve, about Meyer. I'll check again when I visit my mom next month. If you do, could you please send me a picture of yourself riding that horse? So they don't arrest you and kick you out of the store. Daniel Ketcher says, I remember someone told you once it's illegal to use real money on camera. Yeah, I was I was doing a video about something, and I held up a bill. And I was talking about it, and somebody's like, "That's illegal! Stop that! Stop that! That's illegal!" It's illegal to show money on camera. Why would that be illegal? And because that's counterfeiting. No, it's not counterfeiting, and it is illegal to make replicas of U.S. money with the intent to defraud somebody. But I'm not making a replica of it by showing it on camera. Like what? And people get these urban legends stuck in their heads. And it's like, okay, just because it got stuck in your head years and years and years ago doesn't make it any more true. So Dan Boyd says the motion picture currency bills are Ben's stunt doubles. There was an episode, I wish I'd kept track of this too. There was an episode years and years and years ago where I hid $700 bills on the set, and one was obvious and a bunch were not. And at the very end of the video, I said what I normally say. And I said, oh, by the way, the correct answer is 7. And I had a bunch of people go, what are you talking about? And several people said, oh, yeah, I spotted it. It's over here. And somebody else goes, no, it's over here. You realize, oh, wait, there's one over here. And there were 7. I think it was 7 on the set. Padre, you use 50s? Who does that anymore? What do you use? $1,000 bills? Oh, boy. John says, I got some 1943 steel pennies from the swap meet last week. Very cool. Ryan Labs, I use 50s all the time. My ATM gives them to me. I mean, oh boy. Yeah. David Larson says he uses $2 bills all the time as change. It brings happiness to the cashiers. I've got a couple twos, but I don't use them. Padres is 20s and 100s. You have something against 50s? Tim Nossum, use those ridiculously giant checks on camera. I believe it was Happy Gilmore that made a whole joke out of the gigantic checks you get when you're on TV getting a check. Time's ticking. The post office might still give dollar coins as change for their stamp machines. Yeah, I've seen vending machines that give out dollar coins when they got to give you back a bunch of dollars. And sometimes it can be a pain in the rear. Sometimes it doesn't really matter that much. Trivia: who is on the $100,000 bill? Is it Woodrow Wilson? It's the kind of thing I knew as a little kid because I loved looking at the encyclopedias. What of? Why do you think there isn't any denomination larger than 100 in common circulation? Probably they're concerned if they went larger, people start counterfeiting them and cause more damage. Earl Grey says there was once an old law that prevented them from showing currency on screen. And I'm always curious to know if that was a law or simply a custom. But if you watch old movies, you can see they've got fake money. But they're also drinking like out of bottles that say beer. You know, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff they did back then. And I'm not sure if they're doing it because it's actually a law that said that, or they just thought that was considered a good practice. So, because it does kind of take you out of a scene when you're watching a movie and they're dropping money on the counter. And you can see it's play money. And you're like, everything else looks so real. Vinny Sluga, happy Memorial Day, Steve. And to you, my friend. Art S, there was a $3 coin. And believe it or not, there's even a $4 coin that was minted but not put into circulation. Very unusual. But I saw them talking about it on Pawn Stars one time. Jay Klein is watching the Indy. He'll be checking in and out. Is it on now, or is it still being delayed? Chuck Whitehead says, I got a few Sacagaweas and change once. It's rare to get them, and it's even harder to spell. We talked about them last week. Wild Bill 57 says larger bills are too helpful for the drug cartels, was the reason I've heard. Yeah, you have to see those stories where they bust some huge drug cartel, and they've got literally like a warehouse filled with cash. And it's bundles of hundreds, like 50 feet high and 40 feet deep and 30 feet across. It's like, whoa. Code Mr. Beats says movies call it Greeking when they make brands generic. It's to avoid. Suppose you're making a movie and somebody is drinking a Coke on screen. Is Coke going to sue you? More likely than not, someone's going to go, if we show Coke on camera, they should be paying us. But obviously, if you showed it in a bad light or something, but so. Kenneth Bennington is checking in from Albuquerque. From time to time, I'll be quirky. Art S, the $4 coin was called the Stella. The Stella. Z-Rep Road says, in 1984, I was working as a bank teller in American National Bank in San Bernardino, and an elderly customer came in with old 500s and thousands, and they were real. Yeah, that's why I said common circulation, because I know there are some bills out there which theoretically could still be spent of larger denominations. It's a question if it's still out there or not. Bernadine Sackinger says, now I have a bunch of useless pennies to go in my useless Buffalo head nickels. Now, Buffalo nickels are cool. I like Buffalo nickels. I got a bunch of old coins. In fact, I've got a Walking Liberty $50 on my set, but it's laying down right now. But I love old coins. I just think they're cool. And technically speaking, if you wanted to, you could sell them and get a little bit more in their face value. So don't spend them, whatever you do. Yeah, and somebody else has said, yeah, it's like the TV shows. They had somebody using a phone, and they always start the number with 555. And now that's a little different because the concern is if you put a number in a movie, people might call it and they get mad at the movie makers. Go, why'd you use my number? But just ask anybody whose phone number is 867-5309 in any area code, and they'll tell you they get that phone call all the time. Hey, Jenny, I got your number. So. Jay Klein says my grandfather had $500 and $1,000 bills. He got rid of them because we never found them after he died. You never found them. You wonder, don't you? It's sad that you always hear about people who pass away and they had stuff and nobody can find it. It makes you wonder, did he still have it or did somebody find it before I did? So, Zach, are you coming to Grand Rapids in July to see Aussie Pink Floyd? I suspect I am. If anybody is going to the Aussie Pink Floyd show in Grand Rapids, send me a note, and we'll hang out. John, Ike dollars or Eisenhower dollars. Art S. U.S. also made a gold $1 coin. Yeah, it's tiny. It is tiny. I've got a couple of them, and so there was they used to refer to as an eagle was $10. So a double eagle is a $20 coin. And you could find a $20 coin, $5 coin, which is a half eagle. They actually made a $2.50 coin, $2.50 gold, quarter eagle. And then, of course, the $1 coin. And the $1 coin was diminutive. It was tiny. The fact that people carried coins like that and they actually had value is just mind-blowing because how easy they would be to drop and lose. So Dan Boyd says they throw out the television set with $5,000 stashed inside. You always hear stories about that where people go to like, Goodwill and they buy like an old dresser. They pull the drawers out of it to clean it and they find it taped up inside of it like a big old stash of money. Makes you wonder. Old Paint 71 says there was the bit at 12.5 cents, 2 bits being a quarter today. Yeah, but I don't think we ever had a 12.5 cent coin. But the piece of 8 was the original Spanish real coin, a full size silver coin, roughly the size of an American silver dollar, maybe a little smaller. And the way you made change back then, if you had to, is you cut the coin. So if I owed you a half real, I'd cut it in half and give you half, and now I've got a half, you got a half. And so if you cut it in quarters and if you cut it in eighths, and eighths were considered to be the smallest size you could cut it into that people would recognize as being spendable. And so a quarter dollar would be 2 bits of an 8-bit thing. So there you go. Chris Pott, your Sunday live shows are very entertaining. Don't stop. Zach, I have some wheat pennies that don't have much street value, but the sentimental value is through the roof. No, and believe it or not, they're worth something because they're older and they're technically an out of out of minting coin. So I hang on to wheat pennies. I've got a whole container full of them. And when I'm metal detecting, I find them, I'm like, cool, I found a wheat penny. It usually indicates there could be other old coins here too. So Dan Boyd once cut a penny in half with tin snips. Oh, you can do it. It's a lot harder to do though. So Andrew Jones, do you think AI lawyers will be a thing in the future for people wanting to defend themselves? Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be horrible. It's going to be a catastrophe. But, people have the right to defend themselves. If they want to do that, they can. So I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody in court going like this, going, yes, Your Honor, I am here to plead not guilty on behalf of count one. The judge ask no question and to go, I am going to, and it's going to be them reading answers back, and a judge can't tell them not to read, but whether the results will be any good, I don't know. Whitehead says those wheat pennies could be worth 3 cents if they're all copper, which not all copper, but they have more copper content than the later memorial pennies do, at least the zinkers. But we don't need to get into that. Yeah, Code Mr. Beats is pre-82 pennies. The zinc pennies are just, they're garbage. They actually dissolve if you have too much fertilizer in your grass. Ella Theo is trimming the chain of a necklace and forgot it was made of sterling silver rather than base metal. You hang on to that. Janitor Bob hasn't metal detected in 10 years. I got my detector out the other day. Haven't used it yet, but I've got it out. Battery's charged, ready to go. Next time I see a likely spot, I'll jump out and do some detecting. DePaul says the cup matches the shirt. In a roundabout way, yeah. This is a brand new shirt. I got this past week, so this has never been on camera before. Opinion Rat says zinc pennies dissolve. They don't dissolve completely, but you have to. So if you do a lot of metal detecting, you see all kinds of stuff. And I've dug pennies that were like an inch or two down. They were so gross. Like I didn't want to even touch it. It was dissolved. It's hard to describe how mangled they get. And I've heard it's from the fertilizers and the water on the lawns just soaking the coins over a period of years. And they come out looking so gross, it's ridiculous. Tom says, I recently got an Indian head penny in my change in fair condition. That's cool. Because Indian heads obviously went out in 1909. And that's the same year the Lincoln started was 09. So it's a long time ago. Brandon C, the shirt is two different colors on my phone and my TV. Well, it's one of these Eddie Bauer shirts, of course, because of course it is. But it's also got that thing where it's got the I don't know what it calls stripes or uneven coloration. So Tool Monkey, I noticed you have a blue solo cup. Are those just as good as red solo cups for collecting evidence? I didn't know. Do you actually collect evidence in a solo cup? I thought they used baggies for that. Lowell Riggs IM claims he's now been accused of being a bot twice this week. Really? Why were you being too polite again in a discussion? Anthony says, I do like some things about artificial intelligence. I used Grok to help me design my current business card. Well, that's cool. I mean, anything you can double check. The scary part's when you use AI or one of these things and you don't check the work and you just trust that it's doing the right things. And no. Old Paint 71 says apparently the Spanish dollar was made legal tender in 1793 and demonetized in 1857. The US didn't actually mint a coin that was in bits, but was using the pieces of 8. Interesting. Now, I can tell you that in colonial America, they use all kinds of stuff. I mean, colonies minted their own money. And so there was a money shortage at one point in time. Chris Roloffs says, greetings from Springfield, Missouri. A little play on words there. Leon Sanders says, I got a 1944 silver penny, which I believe would be a steel penny. In my change at the Speedway, Rochester Road in Avon. Recently? Wow, I'm surprised. I mean, it's worth more than a penny, but that somebody else didn't just yank it out of circulation. But I've gotten weird stuff in my change too. Oh, DePaul says solo cups are used to cover and preserve shell casings. So they're walking around a spot and they flip a cup over and put it on top. Well, I think they'd probably want them to be brightly colored then, so you wouldn't actually walk by and kick it. Tool Monkey says, I guess you haven't been following the Karen Reed trial. No, earlier I said specifically I hadn't. Oh. Dan Boyd, Missouri. The tribe says states weren't making coins. The colonies were. Many colonies became states. So. Dime bag coins. Hey, man, nice to see you. Mr. Smithers, multiple times I've come across Mercury dimes and loose change. It's been a while since I got a Mercury because those are more obvious to people. Like a silver Roosevelt, no. But I mean, I remember getting them back in the 60s, but that was a while ago. Vinny Slug, did you hear about McDonald's new law? No. Don't know what you're talking about. Chuck Whited, I've gotten foreign coins in my change. I remember working at the gas station. A woman came in a Volkswagen. Why I remember that, I don't know. And she goes, I need like $3 of gas. I put $3 of gas in, and she was acting like she's in a hurry, and she held her hand out like this and dumped a bunch of change in my hand and just took off. And I think she knew she was short. And it came out to be like 285, but one of the coins was like a 5 something or other from the Bahamas. It wasn't even U.S. currency. But it's just she was short by like 20 cents then, so it's no big deal. But Good Citizen says he's late to the party. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Those are things I do not pressure you to do. I don't know why. It still bugs me when I see somebody, especially somebody I watch a lot, go, oh, and by the way, please subscribe. And I just can't get myself to do it. I worked in radio too long. And one of the funny things that this is true of almost every YouTuber you know. I've got over 500,000 subscribers. And yet when I look at the statistics, about half of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribers. So what happens is a lot of YouTubers go, if only I could get these people to subscribe, then my numbers would be bigger. Well, which number do you care about? How many subscribers you got or how many viewers you've got? That's all I care about. I don't care. If I had one subscriber and I got 1 million views a day, I wouldn't care. Why would I care? Dan Boyd says Missouri is about 5 or 6 hours from Cincinnati. Strat says I gave all my coins and precious metals to my grandson, but he will do the dream cruise with me this summer. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'll be at the dream cruise, and yet I don't know yet which number one, which car I'll bring, and number two, I don't know where I'll be, because the last couple years I've been up at the Williams International Picnic, which is where Jay Leno's Turban car was on display. But I don't think they'll be doing that this year. So I might just be out driving around. So I don't know. A couple of years I've been there where I announced where I was. Hey, show up and I'll give you a free book. And one year I had 4 people come get the free books. But then again, the Dream Cruise is quite a length. And getting to where I was would have taken some effort for some people. So. Tool Monkey doesn't like my hair, apparently. Zach says we used to get Canadian change all the time. I think they're called loonies. Well, the one's called a loony. The two is called a toonie. I've never gotten those in my change, so I wouldn't accept them. But I've gotten the pennies, dimes, nickels, and quarters all the time in Michigan. It happens all the time. Anthony's got 5 subscribers, but who cares? How many views do you get? Code Mr. Beats says Nolans, Louisiana. Solid Pixel 21 of McDonald's in Fairfax County, Virginia has banned dine-in service for anyone under 21 years old. I believe I did a video on that, didn't I? I think I did. I lose track. Oh, God. Yeah, man, not only is Jeff says I'm a subscriber, but I often watch on the Roku, which means I need to log in to comment. Yeah, I have a couple of things I log into to watch, and I'm not logged in. I log on to watch, but I'm not logged in to the channel, and it starts recommending really weird stuff to me. Why does Alexander Ganaka keep saying Leno alert, Leno alert? Dimebag Coin says you're doing very well if 10% of your subscribers come to a live show. Oh, I'm way short of that. Good Citizen, 352 million combined views. Hang on. Let's see here. Views. And lifetime. 392 million. And I know that for some odd reason I tell people that they don't believe me, but the numbers that I get are different than the numbers that are forward facing. I'm not quite sure why that is, but I just know they are. Kenneth Bennington will be at the Dream Cruise. Got friends in Waterford. Anthony says, Steve, your hair is fine. Looks cool. The same reason you should not come here for music critiques. You should not come here for hair tips. Star says I share almost all of your videos. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's the one thing. Once in a while, I'll get somebody who sends me a video and goes, "You got to see this video," and I'll have a bunch of people send it to me. I'm like, wait, why don't these people do that with my videos? Usually, you can figure it out though. Dimebag Coin says, Steve, people are so hung up on the subscriber count. The support you have is what's important. Who comes when you call? Now, I can tell you right now that I know people who've got monstrous sub counts. The subscriber number is huge. And yet their videos don't reflect that for some weird reason. And there's a variety of reasons why that could be true. But the number one thing you'd want is people to watch your videos. So if you said, Steve, tomorrow you can have 1 million subscribers, but 0 views. I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want that. No. The Prodigal Stranger says, how many million of those are on the don't buy an RV video? Now, that's a good question. So, Lifetime, don't buy an RV is not even in the top. It's not in the top 25. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 videos now over 2 million. And then I've got the rest are over 1.3. Wow. I haven't looked at that in a while. I got to go look at that. Reiner, man, where is Canadian Robot Lady? She should be here. She said she'd be here in the second hour. Zach, is that Prel? no, it's Dippity Doo. No, it's my hair getting too long and it's hairspray. So Bob Blah Blah says I subscribe to many channels I don't regularly watch. Johnny Z says someone might subscribe to a channel and never go back. That probably does happen. Josh's hours viewed is probably a better metric. Oh, it's an important metric. If you get a lot of people who watch a video for 3 seconds and bail, that will hurt you. Because eventually YouTube's going to go, oh, this guy's got like something about the thumbnails make you want to watch, but then they bail. So we shouldn't recommend these to people. Airplane Mechanic, Camping World could pay Steve $100,000 to do a why you should buy an RV video. Sadly, they never offered me the money. Tool Monkey, do you feel more courts should stream their proceedings? I like the streamed proceedings. What I wish they'd get rid of, though, are the stupid Zoom meeting hearing things. I've seen so many on there where there's somebody with a phone like this, so it's like looking up their nose, and then there's 3 bad connections and people stepping on each other. And it's like, oh my God, this hearing would take 5 minutes in real life, and it takes half an hour because people are like, excuse me, unmute your microphone. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me? Dr. Rick, great to see you on this Memorial Day weekend. And to you, my friend. Canadian Robot Lady is in the house. Hi, everyone. I was busy creating keto everything bagels. Just got them out of the oven. Wait, everything bagels, but they're keto. Okay. What is your most watched video? Kurt the Squirt. It's the one entitled You Were Right, which a lot of people probably watch because they like the fact that maybe they were right about something. But it's the one where some state finally did a civil asset forfeiture on an armored truck. They pulled over a courier. It wasn't an armored truck, but it was a company that transfers cash, and pulled them over and said, because you're transferring cash that we know came from a dispensary that was operating legally, by the way, but in our state it's not legal, therefore the money's illegal, therefore we can seize it. And people are always saying, why don't they just pull over armored vehicles and take the money? And so they finally did it. Yeah, Opinion Rat says, don't forget about the guys that disguise themselves as cats. There's that one famous story where an attorney logged on using Zoom, and he couldn't get rid of the cat emoji, or the cat, whatever you call that when you change your persona on screen. Chris, better, what's worse, an RV or a boat with respect to buying? You know, it depends on your expectations, because they can both become money pits. But most people don't use a boat the same way they use an RV. A lot of people buy RVs planning on living in them, or traveling in them and using them for like 3 weeks straight. I know people who have boats who take them out twice a month for 3 months and put them away. They use it a grand total of like 8 days, you know? So some of those things might last a while. But the RVs, no. So it's a matter of your expectations. Canadian Robot Lady is having a sunny day in the Alberta mountains. I suspect it's a little bit cooler there than it might be down here, but I could be wrong. Standard deviation is filter, and MH08 is avatar. So I've heard it referred to as both a filter and an avatar. And agreeing with us is MH08 and Code Meets Beats as well. And LFE, of course, says, I am not a cat, which I believe the guy said. Yeah, Michael Holland, I'm ready to proceed. I'm not a cat. Padre says you can always get the both boat and RV and tow the boat with the RV. Okay. Vinny Sluga, I sent you the video of the McDonald's law. Okay, I'll look for it. K.A. Fleury, I have friends who live in their boat in summer in Michigan. You know something? I'd have a hard time doing that because my fear would be like, what if it starts sinking overnight? Will I wake up underwater? There's just the thought that it seems to be asking for trouble. I mean, I know they make houseboats. I know that. I'm just saying, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Mr. Fix says, I have an old pop-up camper at the hunting camp. It's been up and open for years now, and everything works on it. It was even next to a house that burnt down. Well, the funny thing is that, believe it or not, leaving it in one place and not popping up and down, probably made it last longer. Because I know people who say they buy a brand new camper with a slide out, and the first few times they use it, it goes out, in, out, in, out, and all of a sudden something goes wonky on it. And if they had simply brought it someplace, opened it up, and left it there, it might not have broken like that. Mark Miller, whatever happened to the Dragon lawyer's brief? Did they resubmit? I believe they did. I didn't follow up on it, but I assume they did. It looked like a very serious case. And the court just wasn't amused by the watermark. John Michael Karma says if you wake up underwater, you might be dead. or very close to it. Cromwell 564, I've seen a boat that sank while docked. Yeah, that's also embarrassing. I've seen that happen a couple of times where there's a couple of channels on YouTube devoted to mishaps at the boat launch. In fact, one might be called that. I don't know. But I was out on years and years and years ago with a friend of mine who had a boat. Big boat. We're driving along in a big boat, and we see another boater who's clearly in distress. So we pull up very, very slowly, we're about 100 feet away, and the guy's got this little tiny hydroplane with an outboard motor on it. It's very, very tail heavy. He's got a woman behind him, and he's sitting in this like front and back like this. The boat's like 10 feet, 12 feet long, and it only was about this high if it was sitting on the ground, maybe a little more. But I assume that once you got this thing up on plane and floored, it was probably going really, really fast. But for whatever reason, it got swamped, and now the back end was starting to sink like this. And the engine was going under the water. So he yelled at the guy, do you need some help? And he goes, no. He's drunk also. And where we were in the bay, the boat I was on had a depth finder. And I turned to my friend, I go, how deep is it? He goes, it's 120 feet. And if he'd gone in about 30 or 40 feet, he could have brought it up and put it in about 10 feet of water. It was a big drop off right there. And my friend starts yelling to the guy, going, dude, just get the boat over there and the water's shallower. And the guy's like waving us off. And finally, the guy I'm with has a line. And he goes, do you want me to throw you a line? And the guy goes, no, I don't need your help. And so we sat there and watched as this guy's boat sank. And eventually it went, and then under the water. And now another boat pulled up, and this guy and his girlfriend got in that boat, and they left. And a couple of days later, we saw somebody pulling the boat out. They actually got someone down there. I don't know how, but they got somebody down there, and they hooked the boat, and they dragged it out, but it was underwater for a couple of days. And if the guy had simply let us toss him a line, we could have pulled him in. We probably could have pulled him to shore, actually. We could have pulled him close enough to shore where the boat wouldn't have gone underwater. So crazy, crazy, crazy. David Artesian, hi, Steve from Zephyr Hills, Florida. Strat says a lot of people in Florida have got boats. Yeah, Florida and Michigan and California are the three big states for boats with registration numbers, I'm pretty sure. Josh, I launched a boat without the plug once. You would think that the plug in a boat is something that it almost shouldn't exist, but you know why it does exist. But you it's to me, it's like the gas cap on a car. I don't put the gas cap down. I always hold on to it for fear I'll put it down and forget to pick it back up again. So several people are calling out perhaps that was an insurance scam. That's possible. But to do that in front of all those witnesses does seem like that would be a little odd. Time's ticking, so there could have been contraband on the boat. That's true. Joel Jensen, Blue October is coming to Denver. Blue October is touring. They just announced last week they're also coming to Detroit, I believe, in November. And I love Blue October. I talk about music here a little bit. They're one of my favorite bands. They've not gotten a lot of airplay across America, but somehow I found out about them a few years ago. I've seen them now 5 times. They are amazing. Check them out. My favorite song by them is She's My Ride Home, which they do not perform live ever, which bothers me. What are you going to do? Sewell Slows, hey, Steve, watching on my vacation in the windy city of Chicago. Is it windy? I was there not so long ago. Tool Monkey, rules for Zoom participants in court. 1, no eating, drinking, or smoking. 2, no driving or walking. 3, head and shoulders in frame, face. And how about number 4, no hats? I've seen guys check in from their living room wearing a hat. And I taught trial practice. We taught it in a moot. Tell people from now on, we're going to treat this room like it's a courtroom. People go, okay. And I go, so starting tomorrow, no hats. And like 5 guys will be like, what? And it's like, hey, if you're in law school and you still think the baseball cap is a necessary part of your ensemble, you might need to rethink that. Good Citizen says new gas caps have a tether. Okay. The gas cap on my Viper does not have a tether. Gas cap on my Cobra does not have a tether. Gas cap on my Jeep does not have a tether. The gas cap on my Cub Cadet does, however. So there you go. Dan Boyd says Tool Monkey and no cats in camera view. Can you really tell a cat what to do, though? Really? Zach, is there a reason why they won't perform that song live? She's My Ride Home by Blue October? Probably because it was one of their earlier songs and they got sick of playing it. I've heard of bands that do that. Now, I've watched their playlists over the years and they do evolve. They put some in, take some out, but they have not had any on there. Any shows I've seen lately where they play that song. And so I have a sneaky feeling they got tired of it because it's just so old. Zach Larson, how do you reply to comments? Like this one? H. Chelfman, the only reason I'm a subscriber is to get the alerts for these live chats. I'm a podcast subscriber. Oh, thank you. Opinion rat, no fedoras or top hats? Oh, no, absolutely not. Those are even worse because they're more obvious. Women can get away with headwear. And of course, you can have stuff on your head if it's religious. But, you know, some guy just wearing a hoodie in court. And by the way, I know people go, hey, I can walk into court any way I want. If you walk into court and you act like you respect the court will actually notice that and take that into account. And you might say, Steve, that's not fair. Yeah, it's called human nature. Work with it. Okay? Don't go around life being a victim and saying things aren't fair. I could have done better, but I didn't want to participate in that unfair exchange of politeness. What? Oh boy. Zach says it only works if you turn the baseball hat a little sideways. uh, Zach Larson, I mean, commenter to commenter. I don't know what that means. Oh, MH08, my homeless cam watches a lot of stray cats, also other urban wildlife. I've mentioned before that I've got a coyote on my property. I've got some good pictures of him. And he actually wandered out between my garages the other day, or between my house and my garage. And I'd never seen him up there before. So he's cruising around a little more places than he used to go before. John Michael Carmus Van Morrison said, I wish I'd never wrote Brown Eyed Girl. Wouldn't surprise me. That song got overplayed and still does. Good citizen, do your tetherless cars have cap holders? No. That's why I don't put them down. I'm scared I'll forget them. Prodigal stranger, when you come into my court, I expect you to look lawyerly. Or if you're not a lawyer, act like you respect the court. It goes a long way. I've seen judges who are so impressed by somebody where they're like, you know something? Because remember that there's always ranges, like sentencing ranges. A judge can give you 1 to 5 years. Do you want the 5 as a matter of principle? Or do you want the 1 because you were polite? And you might say, Steve, that's not right. I'm not saying that that'll get you 4 years off, but I'm saying you do everything you can to push it that direction. So you do it. You do it. Zach, did you start your garden yet? I don't have a garden. I do have a very, very large lawn. It's a garden of grass. Dan Boyd says that coyote, in fact, is getting wily. He's getting wily. Old Paint 71, I used the gas cap to wedge open the license plate when filling my 71 Pontiac. Yeah, that was the trick. I remember at the gas station with the cars, they had the license plate. You pull it down, and the gas cap was behind there. The filler neck was. I don't know why. Every other week, these things stop working. They start popping out of my ears. And you would take the gas cap off, pull the license plate down, gas cap off, and you put the license plate in the gas cap, and it would hold it in place while you put the gun in sideways. So B.W. Bacon, respect is a lost art in many circles. You know, and that's the thing. And I've met kids who don't know how to act respectful if they wanted to. Okay? So Tim Nosman says, ask your lawyer what you should wear if in doubt. And a lawyer should tell their client. So I've talked to clients before, and I had a question in my head about whether this person understood. And I'd say, by the way, we're going to be in court. It's very, very important you make a good impression. And so I'd like you to dress nice. I've had people say, what does that mean? And if I think it's appropriate, I might say, do you go to church? Okay, dress like you're going to church. Because most people dress nice for church, whatever they consider to be nice. If they don't go to church, I say, okay. But, if it's a guy, it's like, do you have a jacket, like a suit coat? Do you have a tie? Do you have a white shirt? Do you have pants that aren't jeans? But don't get me wrong. I've also seen people walk into, I've seen a guy walk into court who clearly was like a heavy engine mechanic who just came from work wearing coveralls covered in grease. Okay. But he washed his hands, combed his hair, and walked up the podium and said, yes, sir, I am here. Judge asked some questions. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. And the judge will react to that too. And so don't get me wrong, the judge is not going to condemn you because you dressed wrong. But when I see somebody standing in court and they've got a hat on sideways and their pants are falling down, or I've seen people of both genders, believe it or not, dressed weirdly, inappropriately, and I'm looking at going, their attorney would have helped them a bit by talking to them and saying, you should try to make it look like you put in an effort of some sort. So Bernadine Sackinger, how is the serial killer going to make a good impression? Well, some people dig themselves into a pit so deep. Mr. Fix says, I will counter this and say it's disrespectful and against the foundations of freedom for judges to demand you to dress their way. Notice I never said a judge would demand that. I never did. I never said that. I said a judge will notice if you dress respectfully, if you act respectfully. This is the same discussion I have with people who I say, here's how you should behave during a traffic stop. And people say, I should be allowed to tell a cop to go F himself and tough. That's my First Amendment right. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. And you're going to get a ticket. And if you're polite, you might not. That's not fair. Remind me where someone promised you that life was always going to be fair. Mustang MG05 had a Zoom court hearing, traffic case, had a dress shirt, and my lawyer opened his drawer and said, pick a tie. That man is my hero. Not you, Mustang MG05, your attorney. I'm going to tell you right now, I had a friend in law school named Paul. Very good friend of mine, Paul. And Paul does criminal defense work. And he used to do court appointments. Very, very good attorney. Criminal defense. And one day he got a notice saying, you've got a client who's got to be in court today. Go meet him right now at the jail. So Paul got in his car, drove to jail, got out, went inside, met his client, and his client had been arrested. And apparently there'd been some kind of scuffle, and his shirt was destroyed. And Paul said, is this all your clothing? And the guy goes, yeah, this is what I was arrested in. And Paul goes, hang on a second. And Paul went out to his car where he had just picked up his cleaning and got one of his brand new, just cleaned and pressed dress shirts and brought it into the jail and said, try that on. Will that fit you? And the guy tries it on and it'll fit him. And Paul goes, okay, wear that to court and throw that other thing away. And I know Paul. It wasn't a cheap shirt. But he gave the shirt off his back, figuratively speaking, to a client because he knew that if his client's in court wearing a nice shirt, it'll look better. Now, the judge doesn't know whose shirt it is, and the judge sees people all the time who got arrested and brought into court what they're arrested in. But Paul thought, this little thing I'm going to do here for such a small thing that I can do for him might benefit him, so I'll do it. That's my job. My job is to do as much as I can for this guy. So, Mr. Fix at GA, courts have rules that are ridiculous. Again, I never said these are the rules of the court. I said this is us trying to do what we can to help our clients. So, Zach Larson says, I can promise you life will, in fact, not be fair. Opinion Rat, does your lawyer have a drawer full of burner phones? Asking for a friend. I once had a client. I so hope that my old clients don't watch my show. I know this guy doesn't. I once had a client, and I'm talking about the early 90s. Think 1995, okay? Mid-90s. I had a client who would come into my office, we'd be talking, and all of a sudden I'd hear a phone ringing in the distance. And he'd pick up his briefcase, and he'd open up his briefcase, and he'd pick up a phone and go, yeah. Uh-huh. No. Okay. He'd hang the phone up. And then he'd keep talking to me as if nothing had happened. And all of a sudden I hear another phone ring, a different phone. And he'd pick up a different phone. And I went and looked. He had like 8 cell phones in his briefcase. Hello? Yeah. No. No. Yeah. Okay. And I never had the nerve to ask him, why do you have 8 cell phones in your briefcase? I don't know. Oh, boy. Ryan says, I served on a jury where the defendant had to wear a hooded sweatshirt due to burns and scars he received. I can see a situation where somebody might have to wear something for another reason like that. Okay? But here's the thing. I've mentioned this before. I did a video entitled, I Went to Court Looking Like This. And I showed a picture where I crashed my mountain bike, scraped half my face off, broke this bone in my hand, had a cast on my arm. I looked like I'd been run over by a truck. I had a court date the next morning, Monday morning, Macomb County Circuit Court, in front of a very mean judge. And you walk into her courtroom, there's a sign on the door, and it says, "No overcoats in the courtroom," meaning that you had to take your coat off and hang it up and then go sit down. She didn't want them sitting on the benches, and she didn't want them being worn up at the podium. Now, back to Fix It GA, I'll agree that that's a stupid rule, but that was her rule. So, no overcoats. Well, the problem is I got up that morning, I couldn't fit my cast through the arm of my suit coat. So I could bring a suit coat jacket and put it on with my arm out of it, which would be really weird, or I could just wear an overcoat. So the good news is that half my face was scraped off. So she calls the case, and I go up to the case, and before I say a word, I go, "Your Honor, I apologize, but my arm is in a cast. It would not fit through my suit jacket sleeve. Therefore, I couldn't wear my jacket. And rather than approach the bench wearing just a shirt, I thought it'd be more respectful to be wearing the overcoat." And she looked at me and she said, "Thank you," and proceeded with the case. And so simply explaining it to her what was going on, she was fine with it. And there's an excuse. But I also had a case with a friend of mine. Every time I see this guy, I go, "Do you remember this case?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." I had a friend, senior partner at a law firm, very, very rich and powerful guy, and opposing counsel on a case of mine. We both show up Wayne County Circuit Court on a Friday morning for a motion call. Judge is calling other cases, so I see him in the court. We're sitting talking, and I realize he's not wearing his coat. And it's summertime. He's wearing a white shirt with like a $900 tie. Okay, his tie is worth more than my car. I go, "Frank, where's your coat?" He goes, "On the back of my kitchen chair back at home." I go, "Oh my God." I go, "This judge might not like that." And he goes, "What am I going to do? I can't go home. It's too late now." He goes, "My choice would be really, really late or no coat." Good luck with that, my friend. She calls the case, and my friend gets up and he's, "Your Honor, I'm so sorry. But he'd recently, him and his wife had recently had a child. And I was dealing with all kinds of things this morning. And I put the jacket on the back of my chair eating breakfast. And I ran out of the house because I was trying to get here on time. And I was walking into the courtroom when I realized I didn't have my jacket on. And it was my coat on. It's too late. I couldn't go back. Rather than being late, I'd be better to be here without the coat." She leans over. She goes, "Don't you ever do that again." She could have just said, "Oh, thank you. Okay, cool. Like, what are the odds of happening again?" But she had to say that. She had to say that. So Brandon, see, I had to appear in court with my finger bloody, almost cut off, had to go to court before hospital. Couldn't get stitches after that. If somebody brought somebody before my court and I was the judge and they're still bleeding, I would say, I think the medical issues are a little more important right now. Can't you get them to a doctor? I don't know. Oh boy, CyberDoc late due to an extended motorcycle ride along the mighty James River in Richmond, Virginia. Well, at least it's a good excuse. Yeah, Tool Monkey, we're talking about defendants on Zoom earlier. Mark Miller, did you win the case? It's funny. I don't even remember what the case was in Mount Clemens where I had the scraped off face. The case with my friend who forgot his jacket, that case settled. They always did. He's a good guy, but he defended one of the automakers. And they bought back most of our cars. I didn't bring weak cases against him. Zach, if the coat don't fit, you must have quit. But what if the coat ain't there? Oh. Tim Nossum had a blind attorney. He was an older man, still wore a suit vest and hat to court. I have a very good friend who's a blind attorney in Michigan. Always dresses appropriately for court. Very, very well prepared. And at one point in time, there were 2 blind judges in Michigan. One of them was really, really good. One of them was not. But the one who was in Wayne County was very good. And in fact, many people who spent time in that court would tell you who's probably the best judge down there. So it's amazing. Steve G, do you know of any mean judges that aren't women? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've known some extremely mean judges. I've known some crazy judges. I've known judges who were openly siding against one side versus the other. I've seen judges say things in court that are like, I can't believe you just put that on the record. And don't get me wrong, the worst judge I ever dealt with was that bad judge in Brighton who went to jail and she's not a judge anymore. And nobody cried when she went to jail except for her. So Tool Monkey says if the code ain't there, it just ain't fair. Cyberdoc, are there Braille law books? I suspect they convert a lot of it to Braille. Victor Jason, if you were his attorney, what defense would you plead for the big bad wolf? It's been so long since I've read that one. Did they egg him on somehow? Was it? It was their fault, right? Sorry, I got a little tickle in my throat. Romeo Bocella, you planning to get licensed in other states? No, I've been practicing law in Michigan for 34 years now. If I was going to get licensed in other states, I should have done it a while back. Ella Thea has put up some emojis, but hasn't put up any words in a while. I'm just starting to wonder. Oh, nope, yeah, she put up an emoji for Zach. Hang on. I'm worried she's fallen asleep with her finger clicking on the emoji thing. Jay Klein, audio law books. Well, there are also services that will turn almost anything into audio if you ask them to, where they have volunteers doing them. But I know that Judge Taranis, Paul Taranis in Wayne County Circuit Court, I remember going into settlement conferences in his chambers, and he had scattered across his desk all this what appeared to be blank paper, but it was paper that was Braille. And you looked at it, you realized that somebody was converting it to Braille for him. And I remember being up at the bench arguing a case, and I had written a brief, and he had something in his hand, and it was not my brief, but he was following along, and he was clearly reading Braille. That somebody had taken my brief and converted it into Braille for him. I'm assuming nowadays it can't be that complicated. Alex A, no earphones. I took them out about 10 minutes ago. JB Weld, ever worked with mob attorneys? No. Alethea swears she's not asleep, which is the first thing you yell when you wake up. Peter Mandix, nice restaurants used to have a couple coats and ties for the gents that weren't aware of the dress code. Any judge do that? No, but I knew there was a judge down in either Inkster or Redford, but someplace down that direction, where she had a sign outside her door that said, no jeans. No jeans. And as you went through the TSA to get in, security, a guard would tell you, excuse me, sir, you can't wear jeans. And I saw him stopping people wearing black jeans, because most people don't think of black jeans as blue jeans, but they're jeans. And the guy goes, no, you can't wear jeans at all. And the guy goes, what do I do? I got to be in court. And there was a Goodwill across the street or next door. And he goes, go to Goodwill and buy anything that's not jeans. And the guy goes, anything? And the guy goes, yes, even sweats. So she had a rule that said no jeans, but you could wear sweats. And I saw someone else wearing pajama bottoms. When your rules go that wildly off the rails, that you'll allow pajama bottoms and sweats, but not nice, clean black jeans. And so here's the thing. If I was a judge, and again, I don't want to be a judge. I don't want to be a pirate. If I was going to be a judge, my rule would be dress appropriately. And I'll let you interpret that the way you want to interpret that. But if somebody walks in wearing a shirt that says, I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you? Which, by the way, I saw someone wearing that in front of a judge. I'd look at that and go, oh, person doesn't get it. Or they missed the part about dressing appropriately. I'm not saying I'd be mean to them, but it'd be hard not to catch that. Victor Swenson, bye to all. Peace. Zafar Syed says, correction. A current or former justice of the Michigan Supreme Court is blind. Well, Bernstein is, yeah. But I was talking about trial courts, judges I've been in front of. I don't believe Bernstein was a judge before he was elected to the Supreme Court. And the only reason that I hadn't thought of him is the fact he's elected straight to the Supreme Court. Never had an opportunity to be in front of him or arguing in front of him. So. The prodigal stranger, everyone wants to be a pirate. And wear a puffy shirt? I don't think so. JB Weld said, I tried to institute a professional attire code in my office. My boss shut it down. One of the engineers later wore a kilt to work because he could. What's amazing is that big companies like Ford Motor Company, and then GM and Chrysler followed suit, got away from the everybody wearing suits and ties at work, at least the guys. And at first they started off with casual Fridays and casual everything. And the next thing you know, everybody's wearing Dockers and polos and stuff. And I know that Mary Barrow was asked a few years back, well, what's the dress code? And she said, dress appropriately. And I'll leave it up to the workers and their bosses. And you might have a boss who thinks it's one thing, another boss thinks it's another, but you find out. You find out. John Bauer is the Monopoly man, overdressed for court. Is he wearing a monocle? David Larson, I love my office dress code. I can wear blue jeans and Hawaiian shirts. Mark Miller says at the college you went to, they had a tie requirement. So a professor went and bought ties from Goodwill, made sure everyone knew he was doing that to thumb his nose at authority. You know, but tenured professors can do almost anything they want, can't they? Steve G says justice is supposed to be blind, but I've always had a problem with the statues you see because there's usually a woman blindfolded and she's got a sword in one hand and she's holding balances in the other hand. And the balance is hanging down and then they do this to indicate who wins. But if she's got a blindfold on, how does she tell who won? I always thought she should have a balance like this, one in one hand, one in the other hand, and the sword in her belt to indicate it's there, but she'll only use it if she has to. And she could still be blindfolded, but now she can feel which side is better. But by having her do a balance like this with a blindfold on, she can't tell. So that's the problem I always had with that. CTJ said, I believe it's the judge, the long-haired guy in Rapids. There's a skit going around with him seriously reprimanding a guy. Are you talking about Judge Middleton? He's not in Grand Rapids. He's down more down over here, kind of. Grand Rapids is up here. But he's a district court judge. But yeah, no, he occasionally lays into people, and he does look different for a judge because he's got usually a ponytail. But what are you gonna do? Zach says, I think the scales of justice should be held by a man. You have to understand that a lot of the old mythical stories, justice and liberty, are shown as women. And I don't know, it probably goes back to like Roman times or Greek times or something, like the Statue of Liberty, is a woman. And justice is always shown as a woman. But again, don't know. Z-Rep Road says because a judgment is by decree and decrees are not a physical object, you can only see decrees if written. Okay, did I miss the first half of that or something, or what's going on here? Because I can tell you that the one thing you have to realize, and it probably will never affect you, but I'm going to throw it out there, is that judges and courts speak through orders. So if you see something happen in a court and a judge goes, I order this or I order that, it doesn't happen or become official till a judge has a piece of paper that says it is hereby ordered and adjudged by this court, blah, 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 and then signed by the judge and entered with the court, and now it's an official court order. And I remember over my career a couple times where a judge said something in court that was never reduced to an order. And somebody said, Your Honor, last time we were here, you ordered such and such. And a smart-ass attorney might go, Your Honor, I never saw such an order. The judge looks at the docket entries. There's no entry order. So, no, there's no order. And, so. John Bowers' Wikipedia says the ancient statue Justitia is based on the Greek Titan Themis, a female Titan. Okay. Padres says Middleton explained his hair once, then said he'll not do it again. I have tons more respect for the guy now because, he gets that all the time. Steve G says, all my cars and trucks have girl names. I've never been one who named his cars. I never have. Just never did that. I know people who do. I just never have. Canadian Robot Lady is really trying to stir the pot right now because she said that she had a Hawaiian pizza last night with pineapple on it, and she enjoyed it. Oh, Ella Thea's got a bunch of e-bikes, and they all have male names. JB Wells says, don't name your red cars Christine. Oh, boy. It's not me, 07. Hello, Steve and crew. Canadian Robot Lady, don't take away the pineapple, please. No, I actually like pineapple on pizza. I don't know why people get bent out of shape about that. I mean, what about anchovies? I mean, you want to get angry about pizza. Mustang MG05 car show season is here. Do you attend any? I probably attend 4 or 5 a year. I will go to the Dream Cruise. I will go to the Troy Traffic Jam. And then I'll probably go to a couple cars and coffees, but it always depends on the weather. And so, what day is today? Sunday? It was a cars and coffee yesterday, but it was possibly going to rain. And then I wanted to go up into the Thumb and see my brother's band play at Port Austin, so I did that instead. John Michael Karma's got a name for his BMW, but he doesn't want to say the name out loud. Dan Boyd says anchovies are better than pineapple on pizza. Anchovies are one of those things. I'm not sure if I've ever had one. I always kind of smell it and go, I don't want to eat that. Daniel Kester said, if you got a problem getting a square peg in a round hole, just use a heavier hammer. Deanne Boyd, I'd like to check out the Dream Cruise. The Dream Cruise is an indescribable event. Hundreds of thousands of people, tens of thousands of cars. It's literally a car show that would take you a week to see, but you only get one day to see it. So you got to just pick apart and check it out. Ile Vilmiko says pineapple and blue cheese on pizza. Cheers from Finland. Leave those wacky fins. Really? Blue cheese? Never thought about that. Mustang MGO5 says Frankenmuth has a great car show. I've heard that. I've never been to it. I should check it out. I used to work in Frankenmuth years ago. Peter Mandix says when people ask me which car do you drive, I say the red one because he's got two cars and they're both red. Dan Boyd says I've seen the Frankenmuth show on My Classic Car. I've also seen the guy from My Classic Car at a car show, believe it or not. I didn't get my picture taken with him, but I saw him talk to him for a few minutes. Johnny Z. Bradley is the traffic jam, the cruise down Woodward. No, there's the Woodward Dream Cruise, which is in August. And there's the Troy traffic jam, which is not far away from that, which is, I'll tell you, the Dream Cruise is the Saturday of the 16th, and the Troy traffic jam is August 3rd. And I always go to the Troy traffic jam. Some friends of mine are the ones who promote it, put it together. I've broadcast from it a couple of times. Haven't done that in a while. I don't have the equipment for it right now, but I always go to that. So if anybody wants to come on out and check out, like last year, I brought my Cobra because it was a beautiful day. I talked about, I think I had 12 people recognize me, but I just hanging out talking cars. And actually, Ralph Giles from Chrysler was there, and he had his Kevlar bodied 68 Charger with the Hellcat motor in it. I talked to him for a while and gave him grief about having a 68, not a 69, but he likes a 68 better. So, Tim Nossum, doesn't Tim Allen have a specialty car wash in Birmingham? I don't know anything about Tim Allen having anything in Birmingham. I know Tim Allen's from the area. He went to Birmingham schools, but I don't know that he ever owned anything. It's not Mios. I don't know if it's Kevlar, but it's some kind of composite. Oh boy. Standard deviation, my Challenger was signed by Ralph Giles. Kevin Thomas, you have to make an effort to attend SEMA. When is SEMA? Michael Hale says his sister just got back from Hawaii and she couldn't find anybody there that put pineapple on a pizza. Yeah, no. The whole thing about calling it Hawaiian is a misnomer in the sense that it's not from Hawaii. I think some guy in Canada invented it, but it just seemed to him that, well, they have pineapples in Hawaii, so why not? So Steve Schritz, I love it when Tim Allen and Leno hang out. And Tim Allen's actually got a collection of cars too in a garage, and I don't think it's that far from where Jay Leno's collection is. It's not me. '07. Blame Canada. No, I'm pretty sure. Isn't that true? I've had several people tell me that the guy who invented Hawaiian pizza was from Canada. But if I'm wrong, I'll stop saying it. Kevin Thomas's SEMA is November 4th through 7th. Really? I'd have to take a look at that. Although I think I've got a conflict on that date. Well, it could work out. I have something on the 8th, but I could go early. We'll see. Dimebag Coin says it is true. Standard deviation. Has anyone tried poutine pizza? I'm not even sure what poutine is. Poutine? Is it French? I think my friend JP's talked about it before. Lewis Browning, Hawaiian pizza, spam, spam, spam. Airplane mechanic, what's the highest speed you've had your cars up to? You know, I've never had the Cobra like floored all out any place, only because it gets so windy. I've done some pretty hard accelerations with it though, but not in this Viper, but in a previous Viper. I can tell you that I've been in a Viper doing 150-ish, but not the current Viper I've got, but one a lot like it. So Robert Buckle says you can get spam on your pizza in Hawaii. So, but will they call that a Hawaiian pizza? Or do they call it like a Michigan pizza or something? Oh boy. Code Meester Beats says it could have been Canada or possibly Utah or Idaho. Although I guess they're kind of close to each other. Johnny Z says I had my Viper doing 140. 140. Yeah, I believe they'll go a lot faster than that too. Zach Larson says this Sunday Live is the most entertaining thing I've experienced in the Saturday morning cartoons. Dimebag Coins, father of the Hawaiian pizzas, Sam Panopoulos, a Greek immigrant who moved to Canada in 1954. No Italian connection, no Hawaiian connection. Kurt, the squirt is 150-ish legal. Depends on where you are. Depends on where you are. Because you understand that speed limits only apply on public roadways, right? So like tracks and stuff like that, they wouldn't apply. Oh. Tim Nossum, likewise, Sam Panopoulos was a Greek-born Canadian cook and businessman credited as the inventor of Hawaiian pizza. Padre says he got an 84 Daytona Turbo up to about 140. Really? Is that the little four banger? Or did it have six in it? It was a turbo at 4, right? Johnny Delano is quoting somebody to say the top speed of a Dodge Viper ranges from 160 to 200, depending on the model and the year. And yeah, what really makes a difference in that thing is how you have the rear end set up. Because I forgot what the standard rear end is. I have a friend whose name I won't mention because every time I mention his name, people get mad at me, who has a Viper. And he and I were discussing our Vipers. And I said, have you made any modifications to yours? And he said, yes, I changed the rear end gear. I said, really? Did you make it shallower? And he goes, no, I made it steeper. And I go, it doesn't accelerate fast enough for you? And he goes, well, I knew I was never going to need it to go 200. So I made it so it launches faster. Okay. Oh, the problem with doing 140, for those of you who don't know this, is that you're zooming along someplace at 140 miles an hour, and then a deer who's walking at a rather pedestrian pace doesn't know you're coming and doesn't seem to care and walks out into the middle of the road. And when you hit the deer, the closing speed is whatever you're doing. So if you're doing 150 and you hit the deer, there's going to be an impact, and it's going to get ugly. And oh, by the way, if you're zooming along at a buck and a half and you run across a chunk of metal, big rusty chunk of metal, and it gouges your front right tire, and your front right tire shreds at a buck 50, you're going to be launching off the road sideways so fast that you won't know what happened to you, and you probably never will find out. And instead, when they come and find the wreck and pull everything out of the bushes, they're going to go, oh, I think this car used to be a Viper. I mean, it's bad things will happen. So That's the whole point. It's not me. 07 says, do not hit deer. I type from experience. There you go. Steve Schritz says it's not how fast you go, it's how fast you change speed. Or as the old joke is, when you jump from up here, it's not the fall, it's a sudden stop at the bottom. Canadian Robot Lady is checking out. She says, Steve Lehto got to get going. Put together another batch of keto bagels. I'll say my see yous now. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you very much, my friend. Always good to have you here. Glenn Lego says, same thing with Canada geese or wild turkeys. Oh, at that speed, it could be a possum, hit it just wrong. So Padre says, I've hit 2 deer, but 3 have hit me. I've never hit a deer, but I've had 1 hit me. I told the story before. Driving my old Jeep Wrangler down the road one day in the fog. I slowed down because I saw something in the road in front of me. And just before I hit it was a deer, and I stopped. And then when the deer walked away, I started going again, and a deer that was behind it just jumped and slammed its head into the A-pillar on my Jeep. And then it stumbled away. Didn't cause any damage, but it was humorous nonetheless. So I'm going to wrap it up for right now because it is past 3 o'clock. I've been doing this for now 2 hours and 6 minutes. I'll see you guys, as always, next week. Have a great weekend tomorrow. Hopefully you got some time to relax. Memorial Day. Remember what it's all about. I will see you again next Sunday like I always do. Until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.